Do you guys remember going to the cinemas? Spending a whole evening going to dinner, going into the movies, smelling this artificially flavored popcorn, buying a drink that's way too big and will definitely make you need to pee in the middle of a 3.5-hour film? Remember sitting down with a bunch of people as they would gasp or respond to the film you're watching and turning to each other in that polite way afterwards to go, wow, yeah, that was a movie. I have had conversations with people in a cinema, not because I want to, but because they would have turned to me afterwards and gone, huh, that was a movie. And I was like, oh, yeah, I guess. I'm starting to sound like an old man complaining about times that could have been. At the end of the day, there are a bunch of reasons nowadays why people don't go to the cinemas, myself included. 2024 has been the biggest example of just why the cinematic industry is in a really difficult place right now. In an age where content is so readily available to everyone, from your TV to your phone to your laptop, and so many different pieces of entertainment are fighting for your attention, how can a cinema that is enticing you to come and pay money and sit in just its location for 2.5 hours even hope to make money? However, 2024 has shown that there is good and bad to this. In the wake of some massive box office disasters, 2024 has shown that there actually is still potential for cinematic money making. We have had some pretty tentpole blockbusters, movies that have made incredible money at the box office, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Nowadays, I'm far more selective about what movies I'm seeing in the cinema. Netflix is about the same price as a cinema ticket, if not a little bit cheaper, and yet you were able to watch all of its content for a month, instead of one particular movie that nowadays has a pretty high chance to be pretty mediocre. I only typically see films now that I'm either really excited about or I've heard from word of mouth are very good. And honestly, I've seen a few this year that have been great, and I'm so glad I saw in a cinema. The cinematic industry is not over, but it is on its way out. I think within 5 to 10 years, cinemas will cease to exist, or at least be much more of a niche. These kind of singleplex classic cinemas that we have all over the world, movies that show old classics on film, that will become a thing a lot more common. The multiplex as it exists is currently already running pretty heavy in the negative, and I wonder just how long it will last for. It's a shame. It's a wonderful experience that has been a part of the cinematic industry for ages. But as the people's medium has moved from sitting in a cinema to sitting on your couch, but the industrial aspects of going to the cinema cease to exist in a world where content is so readily available. But nothing beats the cinematic experience. And for many, it exists as a place to go and watch a tentpole film, to take your kids out. These are the movies we've seen success of this year. So let's start with the good, the movies that have reinvigorated the cinematic experience and have proven to studios, hey, guess what? You can still make money at the box office, so please keep trying. We started the year off with Dune Part 2. Now, I have a whole other video about all of the successes leading up to Dune Part 2 and why it was almost a guaranteed win for the studio. But Dune Part 1's critical and commercial success led a lot of people to seeing this movie in the cinema. It is a grand film, a spectacle movie, an epic that deserves to be seen on a big screen, seated in a quiet and dark auditorium. Dune Part 2 doubled its budget. It was able to make enough money that I'm sure Denis Villeneuve will continue to make more, as well as HBO being able to capitalize off this franchise with their eventual Dune Sisterhood series. In an age where everyone's wondering how much longer the cinema will last for, Dune Part 2 injected new life into the experience, reminding people of an experience that is not the same as watching at home. I'm so glad I saw Dune Part 2 in a cinema, and at the end of the day, I don't think I could have watched it anywhere else. However, Dune Part 2's audience definitely shifts older. It's a high-budget, high-concept sci-fi film. This isn't a kids' movie. I wouldn't even call it a family movie. It's a big-budget, tentpole feature for you to go out and see with your friends, typically for people probably older than 15. This isn't a movie where people are going to be rushing to the cinema, people who are in families or large groups of people, and yet it still succeeded. However, if we were to look at all of the other films that dominated the box office this year, it's almost entirely kids' films. This is not unusual. Kids' movies end up being a massive market of cinema, especially during school holidays, where parents now have the option to take their children out of the house and go and see a movie. This was far more common back in the day. The studios that have built these kids' films have massive reputations now because of the money they've been able to make from them. However, we have had slips in this by all of the major studios. Disney, Illumination, and DreamWorks have all been kind of teetering as they're releasing new, original content that is drastically underperforming. However, this year we saw all of these studios playing it safe, releasing major installments into their most lucrative franchises. Despicable Me 4, Kung Fu Panda 4, Inside Out 2, all of these films feed upon the nostalgia of kids who watched these early iterations of this film when they were younger, now getting old enough to afford their own cinema tickets, while also inspiring a new generation of kids who are watching these movies without that nostalgia. I know people who are like in their 20s who went and saw Inside Out 2 because of how much they loved the first film. And I guess an extension of this kids' film mentality that is making them so much money extends then into the superhero genre. We have seen pretty widespread studio fatigue, but Deadpool and Wolverine breathed new life into that genre quite literally to bring a bunch of people back into a cinema because they understood why people are going to see these movies in the first place. They don't care about story or characters. At the end of the day, these are spectacle films, and Deadpool and Wolverine serves its purpose as one of the biggest MCU spectacle films since Spider-Man No Way Home. The MCU has been in a pretty shaky spot the last couple of years, and so I'm sure Marvel Studios are pleased to see people actually caring about their universe again. But it's not just these big budget tentpole films that are seeing box office success. Nowadays, as the internet is as big as it is and word of mouth travels pretty fast, new, smaller projects are actually reaching a wider audience. I saw The Substance because I saw clips of it online, and I saw a trailer before I saw Trap, which I didn't like, and went, hey, that movie looks better than the one I'm about to see right now. The Substance was a phenomenal film and has made back its budget and has received a pretty great reception online. The other benefit of the current age of content is that it's very easy to share new things. Seeing a movie that you like and putting a meme of it up online, or showing a gif of Margaret Qualley grinning at the camera, and everyone who's watched the movie knows exactly why she's smiling. But these movies do not do the same numbers as these massive studio projects. These movies that are making hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars. However, that is no longer a guarantee. Back in the days, making movies like this that were sequels to known characters and IP used to be guaranteed box office successes. However, 2024 has also shown the opposite of this. Huge, major IP tentpole pieces that are not making any money at all. Madam Web was in a rough spot from the beginning, featuring characters that most people aren't familiar with, and actors that end up not being in the film for very long at all. But Madam Web doesn't necessarily feed off the nostalgia of sequel bait. Sure, it's a superhero movie and exists within the Sony-verse of Spider-Man content, Madam Web, of course, being a Spider-Man character. However, at the end of the day, these are not known characters. It's the same as Morbius. These films are kind of trying their best to already win audiences over. It's not like something like Joker 2, for example. Joker 2 should have been a guaranteed success. It is a sequel to a critical and commercial darling. The movie won Oscars. Joker 2 was immediately announced after the release of the first film, and also announced to be a musical starring Lady Gaga, which I'm sure probably turned off a lot of fans. They backpedaled this during the release of Joker 2, but I think the damage was already done. The fact that Joker 1 was so well received and a contained film meant a lot of people went, well, why? Why do we need a second Joker film? And after the second film came out, it ended up losing money dramatically. It lost more money than Morbius and Madam Web. It had a lower opening than both of those films, despite being a sequel. Joker 2 is probably the biggest warning sign for franchises at the moment. These movies are no longer guaranteed successes. Something like Joker 2 5-10 years ago would have certainly made money. People would have gone on curiosity alone. But in an age where people are far more selective about what they're seeing a possibly mediocre sequel to a movie you like is not worth the price of admission. You might as well wait for it to come to streaming. These movies are smaller scale, they aren't these major tentpoles that are making all this money, and even those other tentpole features, the ones that have huge budget behind them, these passion projects like Megalopolis and Ferrari, which also end up failing at the box office. I don't blame Adam Driver for that. That's probably a coincidence. Megalopolis is another huge scale budget film, a movie Francis Ford Coppola has been trying to make for ages, and yet has also failed dramatically at the box office. Despite it being a critical intrigue of a film, it has very divisive opinions. People love it, people hate it. I haven't seen it. At the end of the day, if I don't like it, is it worth paying money for a ticket? Since the cinema is no longer the only way to enjoy a film, I might as well wait for it to be able to be watched at home. That way I can at least control the environment I watch the film. That lowers the barrier for entry. If I'm bored on an evening, I'd be very likely to watch Megalopolis. However, I'm not going to structure an entire evening around seeing Megalopolis in a cinema. These kind of tentpole films need more than just casting choices to convince people to come and see them. Ryan Gosling was a star, was a reason people saw movies. But the pull of the celebrity that you see on YouTube and TikTok so frequently is no longer the reason why people go and watch a movie. Massive amounts of content has led to content fatigue. That's very normal, especially nowadays when people are watching TikTok, YouTube, Netflix all the time, everywhere, as they are all fighting for your attention. The cinema instead is a low effort, low maintenance way to watch stuff. It doesn't demand anything of you except for your time and money. Two things that nowadays are more valuable than ever. The fatigue of content has led films to try and push back into the market they had in the 60s, in the 30s, establishing themselves as places for spectacle, for things that you want to go and watch with an audience, to gaze upon the screen and see massive set pieces and recognizable characters and Chris Evans saying flame on again. Mass-marketed nostalgia bait, movies that are guaranteed to make money despite their reception. Spectacle features that used to be guaranteed wins. A movie like Avatar would not succeed in the modern box office. The only reason Way of the Water did well is because it's the sequel to the biggest box office success ever. These movies have big scale and no return. That didn't used to be the case. They used to at least make some of their money back, if not their entire budget. But as films are trying their best to differentiate themselves from television, they are spending more and more money to do so and making less and less. This is a difficult situation to be in for the industry as they try to increase their scale while also increasing their profits. And so all of these studios are scrambling to find the best way to release new content into the cinema that is still enough to draw audiences in with a very low investment. This is why there are still good movies that get slipped under the wayside. Movies like Transformers One that has received great critical reception but has received no marketing and has pushed itself towards a younger audience as studios are seeing the massive amounts of success that these kids' films are doing and hoping that they can make that money with Transformers. But the truth is, the modern audience doesn't care about Transformers. The kids who are watching those movies don't have nostalgia for it. Most of the people who are nostalgic towards old Transformers films are people who are in their 20s, 30s, or older. There have not been any new entries for extremely young fans. So while Transformers 1 is by all accounts a great movie, very few people have seen it because it was pushed to the wrong crowd. Transformers 1 was viewed by the studio as being mass marketable, but that unfortunately is no longer the case. If the cinema wants to survive, it needs to zero in on its niche in a way that is still affordable. I don't want the cinemas to stop. I like watching movies there. But at the end of the day, as more and more content releases, I am going to be more and more selective. Most of the movies I've seen in the cinema this year, I thought were pretty mediocre. I keep paying for these massive studio films that end up being very successful at the box office and being somewhat disappointed because I come out going, yep, that was a good movie. And that's it. There are good movies being made. To anyone who says that movies are bad nowadays, you need to watch more film. But it's worth supporting those that are. Go and watch The Substance. Pay for The Wild Robot. Support the films in the cinema that you think are interesting and good. Paying for those big budget studio nostalgia pieces still is good for the industry. But as those films get lifted up, it creates more opportunity for other films to fall to the wayside. For every studio movie I see, I should now try and see something else. Something that may have been off my radar. Because at the end of the day, the cinema is a great way to find new things. And it is worth preserving a piece of entertainment that has existed for over 100 years. The cinema began as a place for people to go and enjoy themselves together as a community. It fostered a relationship with the art itself. It created an environment that demanded your attention. And especially nowadays, where our attentions are all over the place, and I am guilty of this as well. I hope we can allow space for a place that still treats our attention with respect and fosters incredible experiences that are indeed unforgettable. Wow, yeah, that was a movie. I guess. Thank you for watching. Let me know what was the last movie you saw in a cinema and whether or not you think it was worth it. I'd be very interested to see people who go, I saw this, I wish I didn't, or I should have waited for streaming, or I did, and I wish more people saw it. That would be great. If this comment is filled with recommendations of movies that I can go and see in the cinema, that I will go, I'm glad I spent a ticket on that one, please do that. Thank you all for watching. Support cinemas, especially local ones if they're close by to you, and goodbye.